Greetings everyone. So we have entered into the phase that RE-NEET examination has been conducted, and as such I am here with you today to present you all with my supposed answer key or the answer key so that you can match it up with your own answers that you have attempted. Okay, and without wasting any more time, let us begin forward. And before we begin, okay, some of the qualifications that I possess are that my name is Shoibal Rai and I have completed my master's in genetics and plant breeding in the year 2025, and I am currently employed under Nucleon Coaching Institute as their biology faculty. Okay, I have recently completed my CSIR, or I have recently completed my CSIR net, and with that small information, let us proceed further. Okay. So in this first question, it says that given below are the two statements. That is, statement 1, the class of the name is reptilia, referring to creeping or crawling mode of locomotion, and the statement 2 is all organisms belonging to that of reptilia have three-chambered heart. And in light of the statement, we just need to choose what kind of statements, or from these options, what these statements do mean. The first statement, or the first option, says that the statement 1 is correct, but statement 2 is says statement 1 is incorrect, but statement 2 is correct. Both statements are correct, both statements are incorrect, and statement 1 is correct and statement 2 is incorrect. Okay, now from this part itself, okay, the question is very simple. That is, if you have read about the class reptilia, you know that they show creeping or crawling mode of locomotion. So this is a correct statement. But all organisms belonging to reptilia have three-chambered heart. This is not a correct part. Why? Because not all of them possess three-chambered heart. Some of them do possess four-chambered heart as well. So our correct option is 4. That is, statement 1 is correct, but statement 2 is incorrect. The second one is 92. That is, how many turns of Calvin cycle are required for the formation of three molecules of glucose. Okay, from one molecule of glucose, or to create one molecule of glucose, how many turns of Calvin cycle do you feel you need? Or if you I can simply give you a simple trick also. Okay, if it says how many turns of Calvin cycle you require for 3 molecules of glucose, okay, do you remember how many carbons do they possess? If we talk about, okay, we are talking about that every molecule of glucose will possess about 6, right? 6 molecules or 6 atoms of carbon. And in that context, okay, if you remember that for every 3 cycle you require 1. Okay, so that simply will come to 18. Okay, the first question, the second question, how many turns of Calvin cycle are required for the formation of 3 molecules of glucose? A very fairly simple question, that will be 18. Okay. Oh, the third question is, photorespiration reaction is catalyzed by rubisco. Okay, that is true. Now RUBP, that is ribulose bisphosphate, when it is in presence of oxygen, it gives you 3-phosphoglycerate plus X. What is this X? Okay, please identify and tell me what is the correct option from this. Okay, so you have malate, you have phosphoenol pyruvate, you have 2-phosphoglycolate and oxaloacetate. Okay, now from this, okay, what is the only option that you can find? Phosphoenol pyruvate is at the last step of this. Okay, phosphoenol pyruvate you will find at the last step. Malate is a form where you will find it in the ETC chain itself. Okay, oxaloacetate is another product that is formed. Okay, so the only thing that can be formed as an intermediate would be 2-phosphoglycolates. Okay, so the correct option would be 3. Then moving on to, given below are 2 statements. That is, statement 1 being gymnosperms, male and female gametophytes remain within the sporangia. Statement 2, in gymnosperms seeds are not covered. Okay, that is true. Why? Because gymnosperm means that it is naked seeds. Okay, so from this itself, can you tell me what are the correct statements just from seeing these two? That we know that the first one cannot be true. Why? Because gymnosperms are not gametophytic, or gymnosperms, they mostly are gametophytic. Gymnosperms are not gametophytic. Okay, they do not live out their lives as a haplontic or a diplontic cycle as seen in your pteridophytes and your bryophytes. Okay, these gametophytes are not contained within the sporangia. Okay, the gametes are not contained within the sporangia. Sporangia simply is a structure that is responsible for creating spores. Okay, and we know that these spores are not produced in this condition, but it is produced in your pteridophytes and gametophytes. Correct? So the first statement is wrong, but the second statement is correct. Okay, moving on to the next. Okay, since we are in a time crunch. Okay, how many molecules of pyruvic acid are produced at the end of glycolysis from 206 molecules of glucose? From 206 molecules of glucose, how many molecules of pyruvic acid can you form? It will simply be that in every form you will find it is simply twice of it. Okay, it will be simply twice of it, and therefore it will simply become 412. Correct? So the first option is the correct one. 96 is that in this there are two lists, fusion, list 1 and list 2. In this you will find fusion of protoplasms between gamete. Okay, fusion of two nuclei and generation of haploid spores. Okay, so from this we will simply match. Okay, if you fuse two nuclei, what is it called as? It is simply called as karyogamy. If you fuse to protoplasm, it is simply called as plasmogamy, and the generation of haploid will simply become meiosis. So it is very simple, that is B is equal to 3, or B3, C2 and B3, A2, C1, B3, A2, C1. So the second option is correct. Okay. Then we move on to mitochondrial inner membrane encloses. What can the inner membrane of mitochondria? Very simple question. Enclose the matrix, right? The outer part is called as cristae, the inner part is your matrix. Okay. Phyllotaxy is the pattern of arrangement of leaves. Okay, but aestivation is the arrangement of flowers. Mad cow disease is caused by prions. Okay. Prions are, if you want a bit of information regarding what are prions. Okay, prions are such entities which are simply malformed proteins. Okay, they don't have any other structure, they are simply proteins. Okay, misaligned proteins. Cell theory was formulated by, that is very simple, Schleiden and so on. These are all very straightforward questions and easily scoreable. Then we move on to, which of the following plant growth regulators promotes the internode elongation prior to flowering in cabbage? Okay, what can be promoted, or what out of all these plant growth regulators can promote internode elongation? The only plant growth promoter that can help in your internode elongation is Gibberella. Okay, that is Gibberella fujikori, from where you will extract gibberellin. Okay, GA3. Okay, abscisic acid is responsible for dormancy. Indole butyric acid is responsible for the differentiation into roots and shoots. Okay, and ethefone is simply responsible for drastically improving the maturation of a plant. Okay, basically maturing into a proper fruit. You use ethefone in maturing mangoes. Okay, it's a trick. Okay, or it's a process that is much largely followed. Which pigment has absorption peak at 700 nm in the photosynthetic reaction center, or PS1, in P700? Okay, so in PS1, okay, the range is 700. In PS2 it is 680. Okay, so there are two chlorophyll pigments, okay, that are activated at different wavelengths. Okay, at PS1, when it is a 700, it is the photosynthetic system 1 that basically activates your chlorophyll A. but in case of PS2 system, that is same for your chlorophyll B. Okay. Sphenopsida class belongs to pteridophytes. Okay. Very simple. Sphenopsida is the example that is given in your book also in NCERT. Which of the following represents the correct sequence of arrangement of bones into lower limbs of humans? Okay. Bones of the lower limb of human, that means your legs. Okay. So if you go from this side also, okay, the first that are your toes are called as tarsals. Okay. Then you will find the first bone that is attached to that, that is your tibia. Okay. Then patella is the knee cap, okay, or the knee bone. Okay. And the longest bone that is connected, that is your femur. Okay. So it can be femur, patella, tibia and tarsal. Okay. It can be in this format also if it was present. So the only correct option is 4, and that is the correct option. Which of the following plant growth regulator is used as a herbicide? Okay, the only herbicide that you will find is 2,4-D. Okay, 2,4-dichlorodiodic acid. Then genus. What is a genus? Genus simply is a group of closely related species. Okay, let's go through the answers. If there are certain tricks, okay, to answer things correctly. That is, you can go through the options itself. Can genus be a group of closely related families? No. An individual plant or an animal? No. A population of plants and animals? Can be a group of closely related species. Okay, why can this not be? Because family is a higher class than genus. Okay, an individual, what is this individual? Genus cannot be just for a single individual. Okay, a population of plants and animals, this can be. Okay, a group of closely related species, but this does make sense, right? It can be a population of plant and animals, fine, but if it is a group of closely related species, that makes more sense. Okay, so the correct option is 4. Plastid that stores xanthophyll. Okay, the plastid that stores xanthophyll is called as xanthophyll. Xanthophyll is a color or a coloring pigment. Okay, so if instead of xanthophyll here it was beta carotene, okay, or instead of beta carotene if it was anthocyanin, the answer would still be the same, that is chromoplast. Why? Because chromo means color. In water, frogs respire. Okay, frogs are the amphibian class of animals, okay, which breathe in water through their wet skins, okay, or their moist skins, and they breathe in your land through. This will be a question that I need an answer in the comment section. In water, the frogs respire through wet or moist skin, but in land, how do they breathe? Which of the following is not a characteristic of chordates? Okay, chordates are the class of animals that possess chordates, or simply your notch chord, okay, or notochord. Okay, so these kind of chordates, let's just go through the options, okay, and we will find out a better one. Presence of post anal tail, not a characteristic, this is a presence. You will find it in every form of chordates. There is a post anal tail, presence of notochord, that is why they are chordates, right? Central nervous system is dorsal, this is also true. Why? Because central nervous system in almost every chordate is dorsal, almost every chordate. Okay, absence of gills, no, gills is also present. Okay, so the only correct option that is not correct for this chordates is absence of gills. Smooth endoplasmic reticulum is a site for the synthesis of carbohydrates, has ribosomes attached to it, is the major site of synthesis of lipids. Very simple, very direct, this one. Which of the following are characteristics of prokaryotic cells? What is prokaryotic cell? Ribosomes are made up of 50S, 30S. If you put it together, you will get 70S, not 80. You will get 70S, and 70S is a characteristic of prokaryote. They have they can have plasmids. Okay, they contain mesosome. Okay, they have peroxisomes. Okay, so out of all these, first is very common. Okay, So wherever you find A, that will be your first choice. Okay, so the immediate option that will not be considered is the second one. Okay, now from this, okay, what can we take? Okay, ribosomes are made of 50s and 30s, that is true, so A is there. They can have mesosome, they can have peroxisome. Mesosomes and peroxisomes are present in, do you think peroxisomes are present in prokaryotic cell or eukaryotic cell? If you remember this part, you can simply answer it. Okay, peroxisomes are found in eukaryotes, not in case of your prokaryotes, that is why D will not be considered. Okay, they can have plasmids. Can they? Of course they can. They can have plasmids. Okay. Why? Because prokaryotic cells must possess plasmids. Okay. So the question is, if peroxisome is not present, if plasmid is there, and mesosome will automatically be there. Okay. So the correct option should be your first one, that is A, B, and C. Okay. Okay. Let us catch up. Okay, Christy, cisternae, thylakoids, and phospholipids. Okay, we will simply match it here itself. Okay, Christy will be the disc-shaped sacs in the Golgi apparatus. Cisternae will be the disc-shaped sacs in the Golgi apparatus. So B4. Find out B4. You have two options. Three options. B4. Okay. So what is different? That will be C. Okay. D. Let us find out about D. Phospholipid. Phospholipid is flat membrane sacs, no self membrane infoldings in mitochondria. Okay, okay. Phospholipids will be found in your cell membrane. So D will be 3. So B4, D3, that is our third option. That is correct. Which of the following statement is related to pituitary gland? Okay, are correct. Now we have to find out the correct options. Okay. It is divided into anatomically adenophysis, adenohypophysis, and neurohypophysis. That is also correct. It secretes follicle stimulating hormone. That is true. It secretes melanocyte stimulating hormone. Okay. It does not secrete prolactin. This is wrong because it does secrete prolactin. Okay. So all these three are true. So that is why it will be A, B, and C. Which of the following statements regarding photorespiration are correct? Okay. So from photorespiration, what is correct? Does it not occur in C3 plants? CO2 is consumed and O2 is generated, phosphoglycolate is formed, and no synthesis of ATP and NADPH. Okay. So out of all this, we have to choose the correct one. Okay. Phosphoglycolate is formed. Okay. And there is no synthesis of ATP and NADPH. Why? Because this does not occur in your C3 plants. Okay. C3 plants do not photorespire. That will be your CAM plants. CO2 is consumed and O2 is generated. Okay. If CO2 is consumed and O2 is generated, okay, that is the again characteristic of a CAM plant. These are not the characteristics of a C3 plant. Okay. And also, since we are talking about respiration, okay, since we are talking about respiration, you can never consume CO2 and release out oxygen. Why? Because you are going to utilize your oxygen to break down the products, okay, or the bioproducts or the food substances. Okay. Now 115, which of the following statement is incorrect in this? So what is incorrect in this? Fibrinogen is produced from fibrin, blood coagulates in response to an injury, blood clot consists of fibrins, fibrin is produced in fibrinogen. The only incorrect part, these three are correct. Why? Because blood will coagulate in response to an injury, blood clot consists of fibrins, and fibrin is produced from fibrinogen. Okay, so prothrombin, thrombin, and then fibrin, then fibrinogen. Okay. So fibrinogen is produced from fibrin is wrong. Why? Because this is the opposite that happens. Okay. So the only incorrect part is this. Arrange the following taxonomic categories in ascending order. Okay. We simply have to make it in the ascending order. Okay. So the smallest will go first. The smallest will be species. Then we will go with genus. So GA. Okay. GA. The only option that starts with GA is second. Dissolved. Select the correct sequence of an experiment that led to a gradual understanding of photosynthesis in green plants. Okay. So how did we get to know that photosynthesis happens? Okay. We will go through the options and we will figure it out. Okay. Production of glucose, role of air, release of oxygen, absorption of spectra, chlorophyll A and B. Okay. Absorption of spectra of chlorophyll A, B, production of glucose, release of oxygen and role of air. Okay. Role of air, release of oxygen, production of glucose. We will simply go with that. First, that spectra was absorbed. Okay. First spectra was absorbed, then production of glucose, releasing the oxygen, and then we get to know about the role of air. Why? Because this role of air will be taken in your photorespiration or simply respiration. Okay. First, the 118, what we have to do is we will simply have to match it. Okay. Starch antibody concanaveline A, GLUT4. Okay, now GLUT4 is simply glucose transport. So D3, find out D3. There are two options with D3, so we will have to go with A. Okay, A will be starch. Okay, starch fights infection. No, B does fight infection, so B is 1. So this is done. Okay, you don't have to simply solve everything, you just have to simply match out what is the most common one. Okay, so B1 and D3, that's enough for you to solve. Okay, the number of vertebrae in a human is, how many vertebrae do you have? 26. Simple. Endomembrane system endomembrane system consists of basically your Golgi and endoplasmic reticulum. So endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi complex, lysosomes, the extended part and vacuoles. Okay, done. Length of the stem is 0 to 20. Okay, the arithmetic growth rate is 30 centimeter per day. So what is the length of the stem at the end of the 7th day? It is simply, we will use the formula of L0 plus RT and we will simply place it and find out. Okay, you can solve it or I can solve it. So the question says that you just need to find out what is the arithmetic growth rate, right? The arithmetic growth rate was given to be okay, yes, the arithmetic growth rate was given to be 30. Okay, and the length of the stem moved from 0 to 20. Okay, so it is 30. Okay, and you were asked to find out through this formula. Okay, this T represents the change. Okay, del T. So what is the change? That is 0 to 20. Correct? So we will simply put it. This is 30. The growth rate, the last growth rate is 30. We just need to find out L0 and R 20. Correct? Let me see if I am not missing any. On the 7th day. Okay, so the R will simply become 7. Okay. Okay, just a moment. You were not asked to find out the L0, you were asked to find out the LT. So makes our work almost easier or more easier. We will simply do it like this. So 30 plus 7 into 20, that is simply 140 plus 30, that is 170. So the correct option will be 170. Let's go find out if there is 170. There is 170. That's it. List 1 and list 2. Okay, so spherical will simply be your cocci, comma will be your vibrio, spirillum will always be spirilla, rod will be bacillus. Okay, so spherical A3. Your option is this, A3. Number of action potentials generated by sinoatrial node in a healthy human will be. Sinoatrial node produces about 70 to 75. That is how you get your heart beats per minute. That is about 72 beats per minute. Okay, 70 to 75. List 1 and list 2, family, and then your this one. Okay, so family will first we talk about, okay, genus. Genus is very easy, Mangifera. Okay, then we go for phylum or family, Anacardiaceae. Okay, Anacardiaceae, A3, A3, B5, A3, B5. So it's done. Which of the following is not a part of human central neural system? That is pericardium. Why? Because pericardium is not a part, because it is the part of your heart. Okay, arachnoid, dura mater, pia mater, all is a part of your neural system. Pericardium is a part of your circulatory system or your heart. Given below are two statements. That is, first, chromosomes are fully condensed at the end of prophase 1. This is wrong. Meiosis 1 resembles mitosis. That is also wrong. So both the statements are wrong. No, both the statements are wrong. Okay, why? Because chromosomes are not fully condensed at the end of prophase 1. Okay, it takes time. At meiosis, do they get fully expanded or fully condensed? List 1 and list 2. Marginal placentation, where will you find marginal placentation? In your pea. Axial placentation, where will you find your axial placentation? In your tomato. And parietal placentation will be in Argemone mexicana. Okay, that is a weed. Okay, free central placentation will be in your primrose. Okay, so the first option is correct. Symbiotic association between fungi and algae is called as lichens. And symbiotic organization between higher plants and fungus is called as mycorrhiza. Which of the following is not a prokaryote? Well, all these are prokaryotes except for your fungi. Arrange the following elements descending order of their contribution to percentage weight of the human body. The human body has the highest percentage of carbon. Why? Because we are carbon based life forms. After that comes your hydrogen, after that comes your oxygen, and after that will come your nitrogen. After that comes your nitrogen, and after that will come your oxygen. Okay. Which one of the following statements will you find to be incorrect? That is, beta cells of pancreas secrete insulin. That is true. Alpha cells of pancreas secrete glucagon. That is also true. Alpha cells of pancreas secrete insulin. No, that is not true. Glucagon stimulates glycogenesis or glycogenolysis. That is also true. Why? Because glucagon is the antithesis of your insulin. Or I should say insulin is the antithesis of glucagon. 132, that is your, which of the following are characteristic features of Solanaceae? Okay, so what is the Solanaceae family? That is, flowers are bisexual and actinomorphic, calyx have 5 sepals and are united. That is true. Androsium have 5 stamens and epipetalous. That is also true. Ovary is inferior. No, ovary is superior. Okay, so BC you will find. Okay, and flowers are bisexual and actinomorphic. That is we will find. So A, B and C, second option is correct. Given below, when any plane passing through the central axis of the body divides the organism into two identical halves, it is called as radial symmetry. Is it? No, it is called as bilateral symmetry. In phylum Echinodermata, both adults and larvae have radial symmetry. No, that is not true. Okay, so both of these statements are wrong. Why? Because in phylum Echinodermata, both adults and larvae do not have radial symmetry. The adult have radial symmetry, but the larvae has your bilateral symmetry. Okay. Correct sequence of adult cell cycle phases are G1, S, G2 and M. That is very true. Okay. So first starts with G1, then we move to S and then G2, then M. M is the mitotic phase, where we will find prophase, your metaphase, anaphase, telophase, and then diakinesis. Okay. In frogs, the number of pairs of cranial nerves arising from the brain, this will simply be, or all these questions are simply to test whether or not you remember what you have studied. That is simply 10. Okay. there are basically 10 pairs. Okay, there are basically 10 pairs, so about 20 of those. Now moving on to 136. Okay, so let us talk about assertion and reason in this. That is, in recombinant DNA technology, lysozyme is used for disrupting bacterial cells while cellulase is for plant cells. Okay, cellulase, from the name itself, will disrupt cellulose. Okay, lysozyme, however, disrupts bacterial cells. Why? Because their cells are made up of two types of sugar components, that is N-acetyl glucosamine and N-acetyl muramic acid. That is basically lysosized or basically hydrolyzed through your lysozyme. Okay, assertion is true. Isolation of genetic material needs disruption of cells. Okay, that is true. Both the statements are true, but does it properly explain this? Okay, isolation of genetic material needs disruption of cells. This basically is talking about the disruption or the opening of the cells, and it says that isolation of genetic material needs disruption of cells. Okay, that is true. Okay, it is the correct explanation of A. Okay, the method of directly injecting the sperm into the ovum in assisted reproductive technology, that is ART, is called as simply intracytoplasmic sperm injection. Why? Because from the name itself you can simply read it out. Zygote intrafallopian tube transfer will be, you will transfer that into the intrafallopian tube or inside the fallopian tube, but that is not what you are doing. Gamete intrafallopian tube transfer, that means you are simply going to transfer the gamete inside the fallopian tube. That is also what you are not doing. Embryo transfer, do you transfer the embryo in ART? No, you simply are going to inject the sperm, so that is called as intracytoplasmic sperm injection. Okay, inside the egg. Adaptive radiation in placental mammals, okay, and Australian marsupials, leading to a similarity between distant species, is an example of adaptive radiation which gives rise to placental mammals and Australian marsupials to be of same category, will be because of convergent evolution. Okay, that will be because of convergent evolution. In this, we will be discussing about the in this question, in an experiment, Mendel observed that the F1 progeny plants are all tall and none of them are dwarf. Okay, F1 progenies are basically all the dominant traits. Why? Because they are heterozygous in nature. So this assertion is correct. Stem height is a contrasting trait, with tall being a dominant and dwarf being the recessive, and that is the correct explanation. So we are simply going to skip this part. Arrange the following in the descending order of number of species in the Amazonian rainforest. Okay, so based on the number of species, we will simply go along with. Okay, so what is the most, or what is the largest number that you will find? That will be your plants. Okay, so the plants should be at the last one, that is A should be at the last. Okay, then the least that you will find is invertebrates. Okay, invertebrates, birds and fishes. Okay, you will find that invertebrates should be near, or no, fishes should be the least. Why? Because we don't find so many fishes in the Amazonian rainforest. Okay, A, right? So the A part, E. I think the answer should be this one. Okay, C, starting with fishes, then we move on to birds, then we move on to your D. D is your invertebrates, then we move on to mammals, and then we move on to plants. Okay, so the plants, then this should be number of species. Okay, number of species is less. Number of species should be the maximum for D, that is your invertebrates. No, that is correct. Okay, no, I got it all wrong. Okay, the number of species that you should be getting the highest should be D, that is invertebrates, right? Because you get invertebrates to be the highest. Okay, so D, A, C, B, E, that's correct. Okay, sponges exchanging O2 with CO2 by, or sponges, porifera, exchanges it with simple diffusion. Why? Because their body is very simple. For a person with blood group O, which is not which of the following is not possible combination of the parents for blood group? Okay, not possible. If there is O, it can never be AB and A or AB and B. Okay, A is possible, A, B possible, B, B possible. Why am I saying possible? Because this contains the small I or the null allele. Okay, and whenever you have a null allele, you can expect this O phenotype to be expressed. Okay, but in this case it's not possible. Why? Because there is only one null allele, and one null allele will be recessive and it cannot express itself. Okay, then we move on to 143, that is modern Homo sapiens arose in Australia and moved across continents. Homo sapiens arose around 75,000 to 10,000 years ago. Okay, in light of this statement will be that modern Homo sapiens did not arise in the Australia itself and moved across continents. They arose in the most prevalent part of your Africa. Okay, now what is we call Africa? Okay, modern man has or is expected or has been found with their traces in fossils and all, okay, to have originated in the African continent. Okay, then Homo sapiens arose around 75,000 to your 10,000 years ago. Okay, 75,000 to 10,000, that does not seem appropriate. Okay, but Homo sapiens, okay, if we go back, okay, 10,000 years ago modern man was found or modern man started to develop. Okay, but 75,000 years ago, okay, you will not find modern man, but you will definitely find Neanderthals and before that. Okay, so the statement is correct. Which of the following is used as an effective sedative and painkiller for treating post-surgery patient? That is very simple. That is morphine. Okay, has been used since World War I and is still continued to use. Okay, which of the following plant produces non-albuminous seeds? Non-albuminous seeds, no albumin. Okay, wheat, barley, maize, all of these possess albumins. Okay, that is starchy substance. Okay, that they have in order to store. Okay, or in order to survive in storage. P does not have that. P has cotyledons. Given below are two statements. One is labeled as assertion and the okay. So assertion and reason question. Abingdon tortoise in Galapagos Island became extinct within a decade after goats were introduced. Okay, that is true. If they were introduced, okay, goats were more efficient at browsing than Abingdon tortoise. Okay, that is also true. So both the statements are true, and it is the correct explanation of A. Okay, moving on. The covering of ovum at ovulation will simply be zona pellucida. Which of the following is used as a clot buster? Streptokinase. Why? Because penicillin is a antibiotic, cyclosporin A, antibiotic, statins simply stops the growth of bacterial infections. Streptokinase, however, is a clot buster. Which of the following structure is not a part of the male reproductive system? Infundibulum is not. Why? Because infundibulum is a part of female reproductive system. Okay, ovulation is caused by LH surge leading to rupture of Graafian follicles. That is true. Graafian follicles remaining after ovulation transform into corpus luteum and secretes large amount of estrogen. To this point it is correct, but it does not release large amount of estrogen, it releases large amounts of progesterone. So this is wrong. Okay, the opening between right atrium and the right ventricle is guarded by tricuspid valve. Tricuspid valve is present in the right side of your heart. Okay, and your bicuspid valve is present in the left side of your heart. Okay. Okay, then we move on to which of the following is not an evidence of evolution? Divergent evolution of anatomical structures such as forelimbs, that is true. This is a evidence of evolution. Convergent evolution of traits like wings of birds and butterflies, that is also true. Why? Because divergent and convergent evolution show you that evolution has happened across the species. Okay, paleontological evidences from fossil records, that is also true. Okay, that is also giving you the evidences for evolution. However, embryological support for evolution as proposed by Ernest Haeckel is not the evidence that you will find through normal means. Of course it is an evidence, but it is not in that sense. Okay, which you will see. You need a proper, or at that time through Ernest Haeckel's you need a proper embryological study to understand how this actually supports the evolution. Okay, the inactive form of Bt toxin is converted to the active form of insect gut through the alkaline pH, not the acidic pH. Okay, in a case of bollworm, that is different. Okay, colostrum is secreted by mother, which has IgA. IgA is responsible for your antibody formations. Okay, which of the following in female gametophyte of an angiosperm helps in guiding the pollen tube? That will be synergids. Okay, synergids possess the property to guide the pollen tube, okay, for the fertilization. Which of the following disease is not sexually transmitted? Tuberculosis is not, but the rest of the statements about lacoperon is correct. Galactose can act as an inducer? No. Gene I constitutively expressed, yes, that is true. Lactose activates repressor to bind to A. Okay, shares single common promoter? No. Okay, so the only correct is constitutively expressed. That means it is expressed only when you have an inducer. Okay, now we have to match the lists. Okay, transformation criteria, that is true. Cloning sites simply for replication, selection, the best option would be ORI for replication, D3. You will find two options with D3. Cloning sites. Okay, cloning sites will be for transfer of DNA to host transformation. Okay, selection, cloning sites. Cloning sites will possess your restriction enzyme, so B1 should be correct. So this one, B1, D3, that is correct. Population of a diploid organism is at Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium if the frequency of allele capital A is 0.1. The frequency of double A is how much? Okay. If it is the allele of A is simply 0.1, you will simply square it. So even if you square 0.1, you will simply find 1 by 100. Okay. Because this is 1 by 10, and if you square it, it will simply get 1 by 100. So it will still be 0.01. Okay, that is correct. Sperm motility is due to the flagellar movement of the sperm tail. Okay. Given per capita birth rate is 0.002 and the per capita death is 0.002, the expected number of cells after 10 generations will simply be, we will simply take 0.02 as the per capita death rate and per capita birth rate. Okay, subtract it, we will simply get for 10 generations. This I will give you as a homework. Okay, you can simply do it. Okay, and you can show it to me. Okay, don't go for that option that is already ticked. You must do it on your own. Okay, given below are two statements. One is labeled as assertion and the other is labeled as reason. Forelimbs of bats are homologous. Forelimbs of humans and bats have similar anatomical structure. That is true. Forelimbs of human and bats are homologous. That is also correct. Okay. But forelimbs of humans and bats simply explaining that these have anatomical similarities is not enough. Okay. Is not enough. So for me, it is not the correct explanation of A. Muscle contraction is initiated by a signal sent by the central nervous system by the release of acetylcholine enzyme. Okay. Which of the following hormone is not secreted by human placenta? Every or all these three are secreted by human placenta. LH is secreted by your posterior pituitary glands. Okay. Which of the following statements is correct about Plasmodium? Reproduces sexually in liver cells? No. Reproduces sexually in RBCs? No. Gametocytes develop in mosquito gut? No. All these are formed or all these happen in the mosquito itself. Okay, except for this gametocyte one. Gametocyte happens in the humans. Okay. Fertilization, however, this statement is correct. See, fertilization takes place in the mosquito gut. Okay. Which of the following are primary consumers in a food chain? Okay, primary consumers will be herbivores, will be your plants or basically the source. Which of the following statements about the reabsorption process in Henel's loop is correct? Henel's loop, you will find it in the kidney. Okay, the nephronic system. The descending limb of Henel's loop is permeable to water but almost impermeable to electrolytes. That is true. but we will still keep it. Urine gets concentrated in Hennell's loop. If it is asking for correct one, then this is not the correct one. Why? Because urine is not concentrated at Hennell's loop, it is concentrated beyond at the distal convoluted tubule. Reabsorption of sodium and water takes place in the Hennell's loop? No. The ascending limb of Hennell's loop? No. Why? Because if you consider this to be correct, then both these statements are contradictory to each other. Okay, so that is why the first one will be correct. Okay, or simply we can show it. Okay, the descending limb. Okay, how many of these are correct? So it will simply be A, Hennell's loop, urine does get concentrated in the Hennell's loop, and D, okay, active or passive transport takes place, but sodium and water does not take place in this. This is considered as an electrolyte and it cannot be reabsorbed back here. Okay, now given below are two statements, one is labeled an assertion and reason. Logistic growth model of population is considered more realistic than exponential growth model. Why? Because resources are finite. That is absolutely correct. Okay, why logistic is more efficient and much more preferable? Because resources are finite, because this is a true statement. Okay, which of the following is the correct order of arrangement of vertebrate column from head to toe? Okay, from head to toe, what is the correct? So head, you need to form your cervicals, then your thoracic, lumbar, and then sacrum. Cervix, okay, that is the mouth. Okay, cervix always means mouth. Okay, the cervical vertebra, thoracic vertebra, okay, then your lumbar vertebra, okay, and then the sacrum part. Okay, this is. Now in list 1 and list 2, both species, okay, are harmed. One species is harmed and the other is benefited. Both species are benefited and one is benefited while the other has no effect. One is benefited while the other has no effect. That is simply commensalism. Okay, so D4, find out D4. There are two options with D4. So what is the difference? A. Let us talk about A. Both species are harmed. Where do you find that both of the species are harmed? You will find it in the competition. Okay, so 3, A3, D4, solve this question. Okay, if the diploid chromosome number of a typical angiosperm is 36, okay, a diploid chromosome number of a typical angiosperm is 36, what is the chromosome number in its endosperm? Okay, so if it is 36, what is the half of 36? 18. So what will be the endosperm? It will simply be 18 times 3, that is 54. Which of the following enzymes synthesizes the precursor mRNA? Precursor mRNA is synthesized through your RNA polymerase, okay, or hnRNA. Okay, you can call this precursor mRNA to be your hnRNA, heteronuclear RNA. Okay. Statement 1, plasmids are autonomously replicating DNA. Correct. Statement 2, plasmids are extra chromosomal DNA. Correct. Both the statements are correct. 174. Okay, we are entering the last phases. How many theca are present in each lobe of the typical bilobed angiosperm anther? 2. Very simple, very direct question. Natural selection can lead to, what can they lead to? Natural selection can lead to stabilization, directional change, or disruption. Okay, natural selection will always give you stability, but it will also push you into a direction. Okay, and sometimes it may cause disruption, so ACD, but it will never give you genetic drift. Why? Because genetic drift will simply be the movement of the alleles in a particular direction along with some other forms of alleles. Okay, so it is simply an accumulation of alleles in a particular direction. That is not what we find in genetic, or that is not what we find in natural selection. Okay, nature selects for what is survivally at the fittest. Okay, which of the following statements are correct? Energy flow from producers to consumers is unidirectional. Energy flow from producers to consumer is unidirectional. Energy flow. Is it so? Energy pyramid can never be inverted. That is true. Transfer of energy follows the 1% law. Okay. do or does it follow transfer? Okay, transfer of energy follows the 1% law. It does not follow the 1% law, it follows the 10% law. So this is wrong, but these two are correct. So A and B is correct. Excess growth hormone. Okay, excess growth hormone will cause, okay, a luteinizing hormone, vasopressin and oxytocin. Let us talk about first vasopressin. Okay, vasopressin would be reabsorption of water and electrolytes. Okay, oxytocin will be regarded to contraction of uterus and childbirth. So D2, find out D2. There are two options with D2. What is different? C is also different. A, 4 and 3, right? Excess growth hormone. Okay. So 4 and 3, excess growth hormone is not ovulation, it is acromegaly. D2. Okay, that is done, then B will automatically become 4. That is ovulation, luteinizing hormone. The surge, LH surge, does cause ovulation, so that is correct. Then, which of the following are secondary lymphoid organs? What is secondary lymphoid organ? You will find tonsils, you will find spleen, you will find thymus. Okay, but out of all these, what is the secondary lymphoid organ, not the primary lymphoid organ? That will be tonsils and spleen. So B and C. Okay. During PCR, primers bind to DNA strands in the part of the process, that will be in the annealing, denaturation, annealing, and then extension. So that is in the annealing part. Okay. Now the last question, Down syndrome is caused by the absence of one of the X chromosomes. It is trisomy of X chromosome. That means the presence of one more, not X chromosome, trisomy of the 21st chromosome. Okay. So trisomy simply means the addition of a chromosome, not the absence of a chromosome. Statement 1 is outright wrong. Turner syndrome is caused by the presence of an additional copy of the chromosome. Is this correct? Turner syndrome is caused by the absence of the chromosome in your 17th one. So this is also wrong. So both the statements here is wrong. Okay, incorrect. By this we come to the end of our small answer key session of your RE-NEET examination. I hope that you found it useful, and if you do possess any questions for me regarding the entire biology part, okay, do answer or do let me know in the comment section. And the questions that I have told you to do, okay, do let it do it in the comment section, and please do tag me in it so that I can see your answers and I can take you through this explanation procedure. Okay, and I hope that this video will be helpful to you in future also. Don't get depressed if you have made mistakes. Okay, life is about making mistakes. You will still get another chance. Okay, and if you have got a very good score, congratulations to you. Okay, and stop and do not stop making yourself be better.